All right. We have quite the stream tonight. We don't have a ton of news, but the news we do have is just crazy. Crazy good news. We have basically a couple fights in the works, or a couple big announcements for fights this week that are so good. Matt, what's going on? So good. We have some amazing fights that basically got announced. Some fights that are in the works that look pretty promising. And on top of that, I have a very special surprise. Very special surprise. Which I think you guys will be very happy about. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but this has been quite the whirlwind of news recently about fights. And we're going to talk about them all. And on top of that, we have a fight this weekend that I have some very strong opinions about. They're, not guaranteed opinions, obviously, because it's a fight, anything can happen. But I have some very strong opinions about this fight this weekend with Gary Russell Jr. versus Meg Sayo. So let's get into it. We're going to start with the lightest weight class, go to the heaviest weight class. And right off the bat, we are starting off with possibly, in my opinion, if this fight happens, this is going to be a fight of the year contender already. Nothing is 100%, but it's looking very good. And that is, in a way, and Donaire 2 is possible. Contracts are in the works for April. Now, the first fight was already fight of the year. The fact that we get a second fight between these two, oh baby, sign me up. Sign me up. This is a awesome fight if this happens. If this happens, we're going to have an explosion of insanely good fights in the springtime. We have AJ fighting, probably Usyk. We have Fury fighting. We have this fight. And then, of course, the news that we also got this week, which is just, icing on top of the cake, really, is Shakur Stevenson and Valdez in April. Not to mention, the only thing that's wrong with this time frame in terms of this fight with Valdez and Shakur Stevenson is that it's the exact same day as Katie Taylor versus Serrano that has been trying to get it. Come on. Come on. Give me a break. April's looking stacked. This is just awesome news for fight fans that we're going to start off this year with some very, very strong fights in the springtime. To get Valdez versus Shakur Stevenson, boy, let me tell you, that's an absolute banger of a fight. I'm going to be leaning towards Shakur Stevenson because he looks so good in that herring fight, but Valdez, with that specialty of his, you never know. You never know. Now, apparently the contract's sent out, so that's another factor here. Is initially I heard rumblings about this. Shakur Stevenson alluded to having a pound for pound opponent, or an opponent that would make him pound for pound. So there was a lot of speculation on who it would be. I thought it'd be Valdez. Seemed like the most likely candidate to make that kind of claim, and then back it up by, if you win, you should probably be ranked roughly in that general top 10. People were throwing out different names that didn't really seem to make a lot of sense. But I think that this one makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. And let me tell you, whoever wins should probably be scratching at that pound for pound list. I don't know if you'd put them pound for pound top 10, but they are going to be certainly in the conversation. They're certainly going to be interesting for sure. The fact that the contract's been sent out, it seems both fighters have been talking about a little bit on social media. Stevenson has, at least. When it first kind of was rumored, I was like, I gotta wait, because there's no signed contract yet. And now the contract's been sent out, says Bob Arum. So that's really, really, really good news. Excellent news. If we get this fight, which it looks like we're going to, that's a hell of a fight, especially at that junior lightweight weight class, which is fantastic. Fantastic. I don't see AJ versus Usyk 2 being fight of the year, and you'll see why, Shrek, when we get to the heavyweight. I did hear about the possibility of reports saying that Canelo's next opponent will upset boxing purists. I don't care. At this point, I don't care about rumors so much, because I've heard when we get to heavyweight with Tyson Fury, let me tell you, the amount of rumors I have been seeing about Tyson Fury's next opponent, we're going to talk about it at heavyweight. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, the amount of rumors. So it's one of those things where until I see actual contracts and everything else, I never get too worked up about it. With this whole Shakur Stevenson and Valdez fight, there was this that came out, and I think this is just a terrible take, which is Eddie Hearn said he's not worried about the clash of dates with, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. He said that fight between Taylor and Serrano is bigger than Stevenson versus Valdez. And I'm sorry, Eddie. I know you're backing your fighter, but my goodness, no, it's not. No, it's not. Now, I'm sorry, Eddie. I know what you're doing. You're trying to support your fighter, but it's not. It's not bigger. I would say Taylor Serrano would be bigger in the UK. It would certainly be bigger in Ireland, for sure. Absolutely. I think if they're smart, they have the Taylor Serrano fight in the UK if they can. And then that way you have it in the best possible situation where it's earlier in the day for, American fans. And then you don't have to compete with Valdez versus Stevenson. Cinco de Mayo weekend. The problem is with that is that then you run into eyes being taken off of Stevenson versus Valdez because everyone's going to be watching, only the biggest Mexican star right now, and that's Mr. Canelo Alvarez. So no one wants to put anything on Cinco de Mayo weekend. So that does put Eddie in kind of a rough spot. Obviously, they're going for late April. I don't think anyone's going to want to go towards Cinco de Mayo weekend. So if he's got to compete with it, if they can have it in the UK, which I think they probably want it at, I would probably say that if they're smart about this, if they can have it in the UK, that would be ideal, but it's going to be in New York, most likely. Although I don't know what the restrictions are going to be like in New York with sporting events. We're already hearing that for the Super Bowl, they're going to be moving it out of LA. It's probably going to be in Texas because the actual state's not going to allow a full capacity for the Super Bowl. They said maybe half capacity, and the NFL's like, no. And it's the same thing with all these major fights, depending on where they are. Is New York going to allow a major sporting event? I don't know. We'll see. We just don't know how it's going to be. Everything kind of changes month to month. See the same thing talked about with Kambosos, which we're going to talk about now. Kambosos and Devin Haney are getting closer and closer and closer, it seems like, which is great. And I'm very excited about that fight because then we get an undisputed champion at lightweight. That's also looking like it's here towards April as well. But I just don't know where this is going to take place because the thing is about it, I keep hearing, especially Australian boxing fans saying, we're going to have this in Sydney. We're going to have this in Australia. Come down under. Would love to have this at like one of our giant 100,000, seating kind of stadiums. That sounds awesome. And I think George Kambosos deserves that kind of homecoming for a fight. Absolutely, absolutely support that. Is the Australian government going to allow a full gate though? And I've actually asked people on Twitter that are Australians. I said, is this really possible? Like, is the gate going to be full? And some of them have not responded to me when I've asked that. Some of them have said yes. That, yeah, it would be possible. I don't know enough. The news will tell you one thing, but I want it from the mouth of actual people that live there, obviously. So, look, I don't know if people want to answer that question because it's a tough question to really answer, right? How are you supposed to know? We're talking months down the line. Things can change. I mean, the UK just completely changed its rules literally like today. So you just don't know. Oh, Shrek. I don't slide into any DMs. No need to do that. I just flat out ask them. But what's interesting about the George Kambosos versus Devin Haney fight is I'm like, what's the fight that makes the most sense? Well, I keep seeing people say, I'd rather see Lomachenko. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know. But then I saw this from Bob Arum saying he's optimistic about Kambosos versus Lomachenko. And he says the fight can happen in Australia. And I'm like, okay. Bob knows something I don't, and that's not being reported. Or I just don't see the Lomachenko versus Kambosos fight happening. We talked about this like pretty much the last 2 weeks on this program because it's one of those things where the risk versus reward is just not there. It's just not there. I sound like a broken record. I'm not going to harp on it too much. It just doesn't make sense to me that you would fight Lomachenko when he doesn't bring anything to the table in terms of belts. He's going to bring a lot of, if you do beat him, he's going to make you a absolute star in terms of the eyes of boxing fans. Yes. But he's not going to bring a belt like Devin Haney is. And if you beat Devin Haney, you become undisputed champion. If I had to weigh the options between Devin Haney and Lomachenko is a lot more seasoned fighter. He's fought a lot more top-level pros than Devin Haney has. I would take my chance with the young kid. I'd take my chance with Haney. I would. But I don't know. I also don't know what kind of figures are being thrown around, what kind of contracts are being thrown around. Maybe with Lomachenko, there's no rematch clause, right? Where with Devin, there might be a rematch clause and you don't want to get into a 2-fight deal. I don't know. But I think the whole where Kambosos is going to fight and who he's going to fight, it's basically been narrowed down from what I've seen to 3 locations and 2 fighters. It's going to either be Devin Haney or Lomachenko. The 3 locations I see repeated time and time again. Australia, obviously. The US, and probably in Vegas, most likely. And the third one that's been floated is the Middle East. Those are the 3 locations and the 2 fighters. So we're getting down to that at least. Because there was talks about other fighters in the mix, and they've kind of just faded away. And now it's really these 2 guys, these 3 locations. I'm hearing Australia talked about a bunch right now. That's kind of interesting. We'll see. We will see. You see, Kambosos give Loma respect, was asked by Shrek in chat. I do, but I think also Kambosos learned something in that last fight against Lopez, which is, I'm here to fight, and I'm not scared of anyone. You know? And I think that that's a huge factor with him. I think that the fact Kambosos came out and just showed that he's willing to go after Lopez tells me he's not afraid to go after anyone. You know? I think it's really tough to say Kambosos is scared of anyone at this point. So I see him going right after whoever's in front of him. The biggest thing is location and now finalizing everything, which is going to be money, all that fun stuff, of course. So now we're going to jump up to one of our favorite individuals that we love to talk about. And this is a great, I hope this is true. And that's Mr. Boots Ennis. Jaron Ennis says he'll have 2 welterweight titles by 2023. Now, you can take that to mean a couple things. It could be who he fights, right? Because obviously if he fights, we already know who Spence is fighting and Ugas is fighting. They're going to be fighting each other. He's only got to beat the winner of that to have 2 belts, right? You can kind of assume what he's trying to go after here. Jaron Ennis, to me, is the best prospect right now to win a major title this year. To me. In any weight class, basically. He's the best one I see, other than who we're going to talk about with this weekend. This is like, in terms of some shifts in major weight classes, this is probably the one I see happening most likely. You know? Because Jaron Ennis is so talented. And we will see how Spence looks. I mean, Spence has looked really good. We know Crawford's going to be having an interesting year with his lawsuit and everything like that we talked about last week. But with Bud, if now that he's going to get away from Top Rank, we can see what kind of deals he makes, what kind of fights he gets. Regardless, I want to see Ennis fight as much as possible. This kid's so good. He's so talented. To me, he is the best. I mean, contender. He's not even a prospect. He's the best contender out there right now. So, don't get me wrong. I love my Virgil Ortiz. Virgil Ortiz is a fantastic fighter. Ennis is just that much more polished, though. You know? So, to me, he's the most polished individual. Now, there's someone that wants to be up there with him and kind of wants to be considered at that same level. I don't think he's there yet. But I see you talking about Conor Benn having serious power. Well, Eddie Hearn says he's targeting Maurice Hooker to go against Ben. This is huge. This is a perfect step up. This is a big step for Conor Benn, but it's a really appropriate one. It's a really good one. You know, when he was calling out AB and he was calling out Amir Khan and he was calling out Mikey Garcia, I was kind of like, I don't really care for that fight as much. But Maurice Hooker, sign me up all day. And let me tell you, we're going to get a good sense of where Conor Benn is in this fight. Maurice Hooker hits hard. He's really awkward to fight because he's so long and lanky. He's a really solid boxer. I know that we've seen him lose, especially Virgil Ortiz, made it look somewhat easy, but Virgil Ortiz got hit. Virgil Ortiz got stunned. Definitely got a little wobbly from Maurice Hooker. Maurice Hooker hurt Jose Ramirez. So he's a no-joke fighter. Dealing with someone that fights that long, that hits as hard as he does, this is a fantastic fight. If Conor Benn takes this fight, he's going to go way up in terms of what I think he is, as in terms of moving from that prospect kind of level where he's fighting guys that are easy fights for him. This would be a massive step up for him in a really positive way. I love seeing fighters that want to go after a little bit more challenge. This is a good step up. This is some definite this is going to tell us more than what we've seen before. He seems to have great power. You know, Samuel Vargas is a pretty no-joke fighter. He's got a good chin, but he's so over the hill or just kind of weathered as a fighter. Blowing him out in a single round. That looks great. But this is a fight that I actually care about. B3, that's awesome, dude. So, to me, this is a great move. If this deal gets done, sign me up. I'll watch this all day, every day. Okay. I hope he didn't do that, Shrek. If he did, my goodness. Whatever makes a buck, right? Okay, looking more now at middleweight. This fight has... I have a few opinions about this fight right here, which is Chris Eubank Jr. going in against Liam Williams. Now, as you guys remember, Liam Williams, he definitely lost to Boo Boo, but he gave a couple good rounds to Boo Boo and definitely stole some rounds to him. And to me, the thing about Liam Williams is that he's a tough-nosed fighter. He's a really tough-nosed fighter. And it really showed that even though he's not as polished as some fighters, he's not there to just get beat up. He's going to hit you back. And he landed a few really big punches on, Andrade. So if he can do that, I have not been impressed with Chris Eubank Jr. I have not been impressed with Chris Eubank Jr. Even though he's working with Roy Jones Jr., he just hasn't really made me feel like he takes boxing as serious as a job as he should. And that doesn't mean I don't think he works out and he's not in camp and training hard. He is. He just is so inconsistent with the amount he's fighting. He should easily be fighting multiple times a year. And he just kind of isn't. In his last fight, I was very unimpressed. He tried to be too cocky, tried to kind of look too much like someone like a Roy Jones Jr. And it's just like, dude, you're not that guy. You're not that guy. I know you want to be that guy. You're not that guy. On this same card, we have everyone's favorite in chat. I could tell everyone's favorite fighter, Clarissa Shields. Now, this fight with Kozin, I don't really care. I don't really care about this fight. Shields, I will say, even if you don't like her, she does one thing really well, which is self-promote. She is the one that makes sure that people talk about her. It's hot takes on Twitter, stuff like that. But guess what? It's reaching a bigger audience because she does these hot takes and she keeps herself relevant. There's some fighters that when they're not fighting, you don't hear about them. They don't really play that game on social media. She at least does that pretty well. Give her credit where credit's due. Now, she's said actually about this fight coming up, after she wins, she said, quote unquote, if Savannah Marshall wants to come in the ring and start talking, she's more than welcome to. I think it's only a matter of time. Only a matter of time till we get Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall to fight. And it's only going to happen if we, as fans, push it hard enough. Linked emails show Clarissa Shields' efforts to fight on Jake Paul undercard. Thank you, Shrek, for sending this out. Really? I think, look, good for her. Good for her. Good for Shields trying to get on the undercard of Jake Paul. A Jake Paul fight. I'm not going to hate on that. Now, she obviously has shown no love to Jake, but maybe this is partially why. You know? Right? And of course, after she got denied, she said she'd never be on a Jake Paul undercard. I get that. Look, she's trying to play the game. You know, she's trying to play the game. I can't hate on her too much for that. You know? But hey, every time she tweets about Jake Paul, gets boosted. Everyone talks about what she said. So, you know, that whole classic, all news, there's no bad news. There's just, it's all good news. All bad news is good news or whatever. That classic saying, she's applying that. She's applying that. Some people don't like that tactic. Some people, you know, think it works. Personally, it's not my favorite. So now let's talk about Canelo. And this was kind of brought up earlier, which is Canelo Alvarez's fans could hate his choice for May 7th fight. Now, what does that mean to me? Who would that be? To me, that's really hard to say who that person would be. It would have to be a complete no-name for Canelo fans to hate this fight happening. It would have to be someone that we literally have no interest in seeing. Zero. You could say it was kind of similar to the Yildirim fight. I remember a lot of people talking very negatively about that fight, how they just don't care. They don't care because they don't care about who he fights. If it's going to be Yildirim, they don't care. Because to them, it's a total whatever fight. So if that's the case, you know, if that's the case where it's a who cares kind of fight, I still think that people are going to watch it and tune in anyways. They're still going to watch. Why? Because it's Canelo. And if anything, if you're a Canelo fan and it's a whatever fight like that, you're thinking, man, maybe, just maybe, I can get tickets for this for a reasonable price. So, you know, like, and especially after last year he had, I think fans will probably give him a break if he takes somewhat of an easier one. So, yeah, Tall Kid, exactly what Shrek said. YouTube comments are a little bit more delayed than probably the other two services. I would say Trovos is probably the fastest in terms of chat responses showing up on screen. So what I think is probably going to happen with Canelo, honestly, is I think we're going to get the Bivol fight. Makes probably the most sense. That's probably the fight I'm seeing happen. But we don't know. It could be a total dud, as someone would say, for this next fight for him. But I don't think people are really going to care that much. You know? I just don't think people are going to care as much because of last year. Canelo's lowest caliber opponent last year, Yildirim, is like what everyone else generally, a lot of other fighters basically took as one of their fights, or if not both their fights last year, right? Although we saw a lot of really good ones. But, you know, we've seen years where you see people fighting complete random strangers, and you're just like, okay, I know nothing about this guy, right? Like Joe Smith, obviously late replacement, but it's like we get fights that are a lot worse. So I'm not too concerned about it. I'm really not. So let's move up to heavyweight. Then we'll go to fight predictions. First thing we're going to talk about is Hrgović. Hrgović is looking like he found an opponent for his eliminator match that he's been looking to match up with, and that is looking like Tony Yoka. Yoka, if you don't know, Olympic boxer, did very well. Beat Joe Joyce in the Olympics, if I'm not mistaken. Very solid boxer. And I think that that's not a bad fight. That's definitely a more European fight in terms of interest. I don't think you're going to get as many Americans in terms of fan base caring about that fight. That's actually a solid fight overall. Yoka being French, Hrgović being Croatian, it's definitely going to lean towards more a European boxing fan base, but it's still a good fight. I would definitely tune in for that fight. Keep that on your radar. It's a great fight for both of them, honestly. It's a good fight for both of them. Hrgović, obviously, I think he doesn't feel like he's being taken serious. Yoka, I think, wants to move up in caliber of fighters and kind of get known a little bit more. So I think this is actually a solid fight overall. And it keeps both of them fighting solid opponents, right? So, Julian, what's going on, man? So next, we have to have a little conversation about Mr. Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is... I got good news and I got bad news. So let's start with the bad news first. And that is, I saw this, which is Tyson Fury could fight Char or Helenius next if the White fight doesn't happen. Now, they already moved the purse bid for White to this Friday. So we're going to have a much better sense of what's going on by Friday, hopefully. Manuel Char is a washed up heavyweight. That's who he is. And the responses of when this came out were very negative. Everyone's like, oh God, not Char. You got to be kidding me. And as you guys know, as I always say, if they put up two names, the worst of the two names is probably who's going to end up getting the contract. Remember how this started? It was Tyson Fury could be fighting Andy Ruiz or Helenius. And I said, it's probably going to be Helenius because he's the less threat. And now we've moved from Andy Ruiz being in the picture to Char and Helenius. So that is something that people are none too pleased about. I think Helenius people would rather see, if anything, out of this. But this is something that we have to have a quick conversation about, which is Tyson Fury and the level of opponents that he fights at certain points in his career. He went from fighting Wilder, and then he went to Tom Schwartz and Otto Wallin. And then he fought Wilder, and then it was like, okay, who's next? And thankfully, he didn't fight a bunch of filler fights. But now we see him fight Wilder again, and it's Char or Helenius. It was talked about AJ. Obviously, that would have been amazing in between Wilder 2 and Wilder 3. That obviously fell through for obvious reasons. But it was one of those things like, it's like, I'm really tired of the kind of up and down roller coaster of quality of opponent. I do feel like with Otto Wallin, we had a little bit more of a surprise than what people expected. No one expected Otto Wallin to do as well as he did. Obviously, having a giant gash open up on his eyelid and his eyebrow kind of made things a little bit interesting. So, I think that because of where Fury is, though, here's the countermeasure to this all. Is this the most exciting fight in the world? No. But does it make sense to kind of protect Fury somewhat, just like in those Tom Schwartz type fight, Otto Wallin type fight? Yeah, obviously you see the money. You see the money that you're going to generate from the fight after these fights. You want to keep Fury relevant. Obviously, Tyson Fury doesn't want any kind of fight that could be that dangerous when he's he's so close. He can almost taste the undisputed fight with whoever that's going to be. Now, what's interesting is that's how the week started, and then this little tidbit came out. I don't know how much I believe this or not, but Bob Arum says he's in talks with Tyson Fury and Usyk for a Middle Eastern fight. Joshua and White would step aside. I would love this. I would absolutely love this, because then we would go straight to an undisputed heavyweight champion in the spring, and I bet you there'd be a rematch clause, so we'd get that back-to-back fights of Usyk Fury spring fall. Tell me that doesn't sound amazing. So I don't know how realistic this is. The only way this makes a lot of sense is if you can guarantee afterwards AJ gets a fight or something. Like, this just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because I think if you're AJ, are you going to want to wait around? Probably not. The biggest flaw with this is thinking that Dillian White's going to wait around. There's no way Dillian White's taking step aside money. I don't think he cares anymore about money. I think he wants that title shot. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me that both AJ and White are just like, you know what? Don't worry about it, Bob. Don't worry about it. You guys have your undisputed fights in the Middle East and make a ton of money. We're just going to hang out on the sidelines. And then we'll get our crack at it when we get our crack at it. Because the truth of the matter is, after, let's say they had just a one fight deal, which would not happen. But if it did happen, then for AJ would get totally screwed out of it, because White would be the mandatory for the WBC belt. Like, if you're AJ, you really get screwed in this whole deal. You really get screwed if you're AJ in this deal. Nothing about this deal works for you, other than you get step aside money. So you get money for not fighting. But AJ has so much ungodly money at this point. He has so much money. I don't know if you can tempt him. I really don't know if you can tempt him with step aside money. I mean, it would have to be ungodly type of step aside money. Now, there's obvious video out there of AJ saying, you know, I'm a businessman. At first he was saying, no, I'm not taking any step aside money. And then he kind of changed his tune a little bit to, well, I'm a businessman, so for the right price, you know, anything kind of can happen. That was his line. How much I believe that, I'm sure there's a number, but that number would have to be crazy money. So I don't think this is happening. I think we're going to get an absolute easy pushover for Tyson Fury this spring. And I don't think it's going to be Dillian White, sadly. And I think we get AJ and Usyk. And then hopefully this fall, we get undisputed. So that's how I see it. That's how I see it. Now, let's talk about this weekend. We have a great little fight going on between Gary Russell Jr. and Mark Magsayo. This is going to be a fun one because there's a lot of dynamics to this. There's a lot of possibilities that could happen with this fight because we just don't know what kind of... Well, let's get into it first. Let's start with basic stats and then we'll go from there. So looking at these two side by side, Magsayo is a mandatory. And Gary Russell was going to lose his belt, his WBC belt, at featherweight if he did not take this fight. So that's why he's fighting. Gary Russell, his last fight was in 2000. Yeah, it was in 2000. It was in February of 2000. So almost 2 years completely removed. So, looking at them side by side, the only loss Gary Russell's ever had was to Lomachenko. He's 30-1. Mark Magsayo is 23-0. If you haven't seen, no, I'm sorry, 2020, not 2000. He was in 2020 was the last time Gary Russell fought. So Gary Russell is 31-1. The one loss to Lomachenko. Magsayo is 23-0. If you haven't seen Mark Magsayo's last fight, he had almost knockout of the year. Now he also got knocked down, but he almost had knockout of the year. It was a candidate for knockout of the year. So, age-wise, Gary Russell's 33. Magsayo's 26. They're fairly close in height. I mean, 5'5" and 5'6". About 4 centimeters difference. Reach-wise, they have a little bit more reach. I believe Magsayo's closer to a 68-inch reach. But we have southpaw versus orthodox. Now, Gary Russell has about 55%, 56% KO percentage. Magsayo has a 70% KO percentage. So going into this, we have a young contender here versus a seasoned contender with Gary Russell. If this fight was about 2 years ago, I would say Gary Russell Jr. is going to win because his hand speed's phenomenal. And the one thing that Mark Magsayo struggles with is defensively, he's porous. He gets hit. So I would lean towards Gary Russell with that hand speed, probably winning by decision. I did make a video. Yeah, I did a whole fight prediction, but I figured there's people probably in chat that haven't watched it, so I basically give it to them here. The one factor with this fight that makes a big difference is that Gary Russell Jr. has an X factor that sadly we talked about last week, which is his dad had his foot amputated due to complications with his type 2 diabetes. Gary Russell doesn't have his trainer in his camp right now, and he's not going to have his trainer or his dad in his corner for this fight. Add on to that 2 years of being completely inactive. Before those 2 years of being inactive, he only fought once a year since 2015, I believe. So he's a very inactive fighter overall. Very inactive overall. So we have one kid over here, the contender, that's a Filipino kid that's hungry, wants it. And then we have Gary Russell, who seems very lukewarm about boxing in general. Has a lot of rust that he's got to shake off. He doesn't have his father, who's been his trainer his entire career, in his corner or in camp. And as he said, quote unquote, his camp has been chaotic. I'm seeing upset city here. I'm seeing an upset. The first major upset of 2022, I think, is going to be this fight. I think we're going to have a new WBC champion at featherweight with Mark Magsayo. I think he's going to win by decision. I think it'll be a split decision, though. I think one judge will give it to Gary. But I think we are going to have an upset here. This card overall is pretty solid. Not a bad card overall. But this main event is going to be a very fun one. It's going to be a fun one. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, Gary, if he still has it in him, and he's such a good fighter that I think he could win. But something just tells me this is one of those fights where it's like we saw what happened in 2021 with so many fighters basically taking 2020 off. We saw what happened with all the ring rust from all the people taking a year off because of COVID. When you have guys like, Parker having a serious fight with Junior Fa and struggling, you're just kind of like, okay. We saw it with Joshua Buatsi. We've seen this. And I think that's why we had so many upsets in 2021 in particular. I think that's what's going to happen here. 2 years off is a lot of time. It's a serious amount of time. So, with that, we are now going to go into tweets of the week. And I will have a little surprise for you guys that I think you're really going to enjoy with tweets of the week. Very fun little surprise. First, let's start with the cringiest tweet of the week. This is by far the worst tweet. I kind of can't believe he thought this was a good idea. He thought this was a good idea in his head, and then he did it, and he put it out there, and it didn't probably go as well as he expected. And that's Bradis with a little song he has for Jake Paul.
Happy birthday, Jake Paul. Happy birthday, Jake Paul. Happy birthday, I'm gonna kick your ass. Happy birthday, Jake Paul.
That is pure cringe. That is pure cringe. Yeah, that right there is a cruiserweight world champion singing to Mr. Jake Paul about how he's going to kick his ass. He already got the tattoo, which we talked about last week. Yeah, that's an actual real professional boxer. Yeah, not a good look. Not a good look, Braves. Look, I get it. You want that title. You want to, other than that title that you have, you want to get some real money. And so I get it, but that's not a good look at all. That's not a good look at all, man. I'm sorry. You want payday? This was my take right here. This sounded better in his head. This sounded really good in his head, and then he did it, and he put it on the internet, and he got no love. Oh. That's 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row from him. He probably practiced 1,000 times in a mirror. Exactly. Okay. Now, there's not a lot going on in terms of tweets. Okay. But I did find something out that's very interesting. Okay. First, we're going to talk about Mr. Rowley here, right? His tweets are, I suck at boxing, but I beat the fuck out of everyone, which I love. And we've been doing a lot of tweets of the week with Rowley. We've been doing a bunch of tweets of the week with Rowley because he's super fun. He always delivers every week with something that we find to have a really good time to kind of chat about and have a good laugh at. And I think he knows very well what he's doing. He understands that he can make people kind of love him or hate him with Twitter. Well, I've been taking our tweets of the week, and a lot of them that Rowley has been doing, and I've been putting them on TikTok, doing like short edited versions for TikTok. And an individual on TikTok, that's another boxing kind of channel for TikTok, kind of has been asking me like, hey, are you going to be doing any like Rolly TikToks anymore? Rolly kind of TikToks. And I was like, yeah, like I usually kind of post them and stuff like that. And then he sent me this. He said, any more Rolly tweets? He said, live stream tonight. We do tweets of the week every Wednesday. So we will be covering Mr. Rolly. He said, will do, champ. Rolly actually sent me the video. And I said, then I found you. So, you know, Rolly is watching. Mr. Rolly has been watching us apparently, or he found us. And I will say this. I'm going to extend an invitation to the boxer formerly known as Rolly. Anytime you want to come on or you want to chat or interview or anything, I would be more than happy to have you. Full invitation anytime, you name it. Hit me up. I absolutely would love to have you on the stream. Or we can just do an interview and you can approve it, whatever you want. Whatever you want, Rolly. I would absolutely love to have you on the program, my friend. I could not believe. Wait. So I was just like, what? No way. I can't verify this, obviously. I have no idea if Rolly actually sees any of this stuff. I don't know. I don't know if he knows Rolly or not. He's pretty big on TikTok. He has like 20,000 followers on TikTok. So I absolutely, if Rolly somehow finds this, I would love to talk to him, man. He's a funny dude. But just so you guys know, when I do my TikToks, I show the tweet up above and I show what you guys are saying. So you guys have been in all my TikToks. So Rolly has been reading what you've been saying. He's literally seeing what you guys are saying. Oh boy. So that's my little surprise for you guys. Congratulations. Rolly has seen you guys in, at least in my chat. If this is true. So, another beautiful tweet from Rolly here. Jake Donovan's head looks like the top of my dick. Somebody got to bitch slap him too. Hashtag ugly ass MFer. Which I was like, I don't know who this is. So I found him. And not only is that an accurate tweet from Rolly, but the guy actually took Rolly's tweet and created it as his banner on Twitter, which big props to him for that. Big props to him for like taking the joke and like not and not being too serious about it. So Rolly tweets it. This guy keeps it as his banner. What a great sense of humor, man. What a great sense of humor. And yet again, it's another week, and Rolly is king of course, Rolly's king of our tweets of the week. Oh my God. Oh boy. So, yeah. Not a ton of content this week, like I said, but some crazy good news this week. Super fun information. On a side note, I think I figured out TikTok pretty well. I think I figured out how to get views on TikTok. And it's generally not doing my tweets of the week stuff like I've been normally doing. Doesn't Jake want to go to MMA? There was a video out there of Jake kicking a kind of like a pad. So there's rumors of it. I don't know how much it's actually real. So yeah, in the last 2 days, I've gotten 160 views, 160,000 views on TikTok. And I've kind of figured out how to get views on there. So We'll see. We'll see if that actually translates to people actually coming over. But today I had 2 videos go viral, so we'll see how it all works. But yeah, just know Rolly is like Santa Claus. He sees everything that you say. Apparently, you know that Rolly checks the Rolly hashtag. you know that Rolly absolutely checks the Rolly hashtag, because I use it whenever I post a video that has Rolly in it. I use the Rolly hashtag on TikTok, so you know he checks it out. Oh my God, I still can't believe like I said, I don't know how real that is, but if it is real, I'm pretty damn happy about that. I'm pretty damn happy that Rolly apparently liked my video enough to send it to someone, which I would be shocked if he actually did. But anywho, any other news you guys want to talk about? Any other fights you guys are hearing about? Normally I go a little bit longer than this, but like I said, we didn't have a ton of news. It was just really good news. Can we talk about UFC 270? Yes, we can. So we have this coming up this weekend. Now, I am not an expert on UFC. Michael Jackson versus Tupac. Depends. Michael Jackson was, I would say, the more talented individual, because he was a complete, he could sing and he could dance, and he had some of the best record sales in music history. So it's pretty hard to not pick Michael Jackson. Tupac, though, was an absolute legend in his day. So, oh, in a UFC fight? Oh, Tupac all day, every day. Tupac every day for that one, then. Okay, let's see this. Let's see what you got for me. Tyson Fury and Joseph Parker, heavyweight sparring. Let's see this. Let's see this. Oh, they're just playing.
Yes, go on, boys! Go on, Sonny!
Especially for those two. Michael might have good head movement and would dance around the ring. He would have really good head movement. That was a video of Tyson Fury and Joseph Parker doing a little like fun sparring, I'd say. So overall, I mean, Joseph Parker and Tyson Fury are really good friends. Tyson is a giant. He's an absolute giant. Absolute monster. So, not surprised by that at all. Okay, so UFC 270, right? Like I said, I am not an expert at all when it comes to UFC. I want Francis Ngannou to win because I like Francis Ngannou a lot more. Oh, yeah, that's a good one, Broke Boy. So, I didn't even bring that up. You just fucking Rick rolled me, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. You Rick rolled me. God damn it. So yeah, the Keith Thurman fight is going to be $75. $75 for the Keith Thurman fight? That's stupid money. That's way too much money. There's no way that should be $75. It's like, what were you thinking? And when that kind of news came out, right? The news came out, Fox News, US, pay-per-view price for Keith Thurman versus Barrios for February 5th will be $75. This was my reaction. I mean, there's no way I'm paying $75. I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that these days. Like no one's gonna pay that for basically what equates to a undercard fight. And it's really infuriating because it's not a terrible fight, but it's not a $75 fight. It's not even a $50 fight. If you put it on for $20, I might buy it. That's where I'm at. I'll give you $20, PBC. I'll give you 20. That's what you can get out of me is $20. Because Keith Thurman hasn't fought in 2.5 years. Barrios, the only reason anyone even knows him is because of Tank Davis. You know? There's no question. There's no question they would sell more if they had it for a more affordable price. There's no question. So that's the question do you want to do? Do you want to put it at a high premium? And let's say you get 100 buys. Let's keep it really simple, right? You get 100 buys. You get, for $75, do the math. You'd get, that's what you'd make. If they get 100,000 people to buy it for $75. I mean, or you could get maybe 200, 300, 400 plus for $20. I mean, that's why I always advocate, even though I don't love DAZN commentary, I love the pricing structure of DAZN. It's the best pricing structure there is. Exactly. The inconvenient way. Which isn't that inconvenient these days. It's not even that inconvenient these days compared to what it used to be. Because it's fairly easy. That's why I think DAZN has a real winner. $20 or basically $100 for an entire year. So it's really affordable for what it is. Best pricing structure is free. With the downside of a racist chat on the website. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, DAZN's got bad everything but pricing. They have a couple fighters that are guaranteed to fight on their cards. And, AJ and all that stuff like that. But it was even better when all you had, even if it was just AJ and Canelo fights. For $100 for a year, you get 2 AJ fights, you get 2 Canelo fights. That was pretty solid. What is that you sent, Shrek? Let me see. What is this Halo hurts when I pee standing up thing? I do not get the joke. So I just don't think they're not gonna do very well. They're just not. I don't get the joke, Shrek. Sadly. Maybe I'm a boomer. Look, DAZN overall quality, not bad. It's not bad. But for, you know, what it is, I'm kind of disappointed. I'm kind of disappointed that that's what they want to do. DAZN, I mean, they have some technical issues. Oh, what do you think about Kiko versus Warrington? Kiko Martinez is so old. I think it's an easier fight for Josh Warrington than getting in the ring again with Lara. Ennis would crush Ben. Ennis's defense is so good, he would absolutely embarrass Ben. So I really think that Kiko's like 36 years old. The Kid Galahad fight that he had was fairly close. He was losing the fight. So it makes 100% sense that that's exactly what you'd set up. So I don't know why you wouldn't. Linares coming back. Good question. I think maybe for like a Ryan Garcia money fight. But he's getting up there. I mean, Jorge Linares is getting up there in age, man. After that Devin Haney fight, we saw still some shades of what he can do and stuff, but man, like it's tough to see, you know? It's tough to see him come back and try to compete. Look, is Linares going to be able to get a belt? This is the biggest question. Whenever you ask, like, is this guy going to come back? How many more fights does he have before, or how many fights would he have to do, or what fights could he get to get a title shot? And can he get that? Because if he can, then I would say there's a better chance he comes back. So if he can't, it's probably not likely. You know? That's my general take. I think Linares probably doesn't have a chance. Probably doesn't have a chance on coming back. So, what's a fun fact, Shrek? Deji was a W. Wait, what? To answer your question, Carl, this is where I don't know enough about them. Are they having they're having a third fight, correct? That's going to be a fun one. I would probably lean towards Brandon, but I mean, with UFC, they're so competitive. Question I see, people saying Fury is beatable. The only way anybody beats Tyson Fury is if you nail him to the ground. Nobody's outboxing him. Usyk's the only one I could see beating him right now. Because Usyk can move better than pretty much anybody in the heavyweight division. The question is, with Tyson, what's his game plan going to be? Is he going to come down and wait? I would imagine he would. He'd probably want to be a little bit faster. He'd probably want to be a little bit better in terms of mobility because he doesn't need power as much. Usyk's the only one I could see that could possibly beat Fury right now. He's the only one. He's the only one, though. I mean, granted, you can always be like, oh, well, you know, they're all heavyweights. They all have a chance, right? That it only takes one punch. It's the heavyweight division. AJ's not hitting him. AJ's not going to beat him. There's no way. I just don't see that happening. I don't see Dillian White beating him. Usyk's the only one I could possibly give a chance to. But even still, that's still a tall order, and we have to see what Usyk looks like this spring. Because one performance can tell you a lot, but it can't tell you everything. You know? Best boxing round you ever watched? Probably would be a Gotti Ward round. Gotti Ward is like probably one of the best rounds ever. Hagler Hearn's first round was pretty incredible. You know? Yeah, his ring IQ is definitely higher than AJ's. No question. Well, because Fury can actually make adjustments during a fight. Like in the middle of a round, Fury can change things. He's definitely a boxer that thinks and doesn't just, he isn't as robotic in terms of like, this is what I have to do. And then just keeps trying it over and over again. That's where we saw like AJ have issues because he'd go in, he'd make adjustments, and then Usyk would make another adjustment. And then like AJ's like, okay, well the thing I got told to do isn't working anymore. You know? Like it's, and the big thing that I have to agree with you, Kangaroo Jack, is that like Fury's gonna do his tactics, but Fury isn't the cleanest boxer in the world. He loves to do that lean on pressure where he grabs you, wraps you up, and then leans on you. He loves to do that, and it's because it tires out other fighters. You're gonna have to tire out Usyk. You go to the body, you try to slow him down. Like, if you can get Usyk tired, he becomes a pretty stationary target or an easier target. You know. Regardless, it's one of those fights where you think you might know what's going to happen, but you just don't know until they actually get in the ring. Because depending on how they look this spring, we'll have a better sense. We'll have a much better sense come this spring. But I think for me, the fight I want to see is Usyk and Fury. When we get that, hopefully it's this fall. That right there is what I really want. I did not hear about Beterbiev's next fight. I mean, obviously, I heard Joe Smith call him out. And I can see that happening. But right now, Beterbiev's, that cut from his last fight with Brown is so bad. He's got to at least wait minimum 6 months. Minimum 6 months. I mean, that was a huge cut. I did see Callum Smith being talked about. But with the amount of damage on that cut, he's not going to get in the ring for a while. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him until early summertime. If not summertime, we'll see him again maybe. Maybe it'll line up and it'll be a September fight for Canelo. Who knows? I did see that news. Callum Smith, I think, is better at light heavy, but I don't see him beating Beterbiev. I don't see it. The way Canelo just absolutely dominated him, and mind you, Beterbiev hits a hell of a lot harder. To me, there's no way he wins that fight. Granted, I think he's a solid fighter overall. He's just not good enough to beat that top level. So to me, it's more about I want to see Canelo. I want to see Canelo and Beterbiev square up. That's really the fight I want. But it'd be even better if we got Bivol in the spring and then we can go for an undisputed, or we can go for a unified at light heavy with Beterbiev. Oh yeah, Fury versus Cunningham. For example, Fury was getting beaten on the card. I mean, exactly. That's a great example. That's a fantastic example. He will fight dirty. He has no problem doing that. He has no problem doing that whatsoever. And look, you got to win. I mean, the Otto Von Lean fight, he's bleeding all over the place. He's got to win somehow, right? He's not going to mess around with him. He's not going to like patty cake with him. He's going to do what he's got to do to win. So, all right. So, I think that's what we got for tonight. Friday night, we will do Classic Fight Night. I have not picked who we are going to be watching. I don't know yet. So if you have suggestions, let me know in Discord. And we'll see what it is. Or we'll do another gaming night, depending on what you guys want. We do God of War and continue that journey. If you guys are into God of War, I have not been playing it often because I don't want to go too far if you guys want to enjoy the game with me. But if you guys don't care, then I'll just beat it. If it's God of War, I can do God of War. And Shrek, I am working on a Jack Dempsey t-shirt and everything. So anyways, I will let you guys know if I hear from Rolly. If I hear from Rolly, I will try to schedule something, and I 100% will let you know. I doubt it's gonna happen. But if I can get Rolly, I will get Rolly. The fact he's even possibly seen one of my videos would be absolutely amazing. I will see what I can do. I will absolutely see what I can do. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Friday for God of War. We'll do a gaming stream, and then we have a great fight on Saturday night. So see you guys later. Have a great rest of your week.